Welcome to the Conscious Health Podcast with my co-host, David Ortega. And today we have an amazing guest with us today, and her name is Holly Beck. And I'm just going to read a very short bio, and then I'm going to dive in and find out a little bit more about you, Holly, as well. And the title of today's show is Your Body Isn't Attacking You, The Truth about autoimmune disease. And Holly Beck is an autoimmune and energy recovery guide who helps women in midlife calm chronic fatigue and autoimmune flare-ups so that they can stop canceling plans and finally trust their body again. So after navigating her own 20-year healing journey with chronic fatigue and lupus, Holly now helps women rebuild their energy through her signature Health Bridge protocol. And I'd love to know more about that. And she's also the host of the Health Bridge podcast, where she explores holistic approaches to chronic illnesses and healing. Welcome, Holly, to our podcast. It's so good to have you here. Tell us a little bit more about this 20-year healing journey that you've been on that's brought you to where you are today.
Sure. And thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. It's been a long, winding, meandering journey with lots of stops and starts and figuring out things on my own. But my symptoms started about a little over 20 years ago when I came down with mono, a really bad case of mono or Epstein-Barr in my early 20s. And it left me just exhausted, and my immune system was just super low, and I just wasn't getting back on my feet. And I kept going back to the doctor, and at that point, the mono was not active, so my blood work looked quote unquote normal and fine. And eventually they finally just said, well, we think you have chronic fatigue syndrome. It'll probably just go away on its own in the next 2 years. And that's basically what I was left with. So I quickly found out that Western medicine didn't have much to offer me, and that I was going to need to kind of figure things out on my own. But in the meantime, I'm also in my 20s and had just sort of gotten my life back. I had gotten married early and divorced early. And I wanted to go out and do all the things, and I could be with my friends again, and I could do what I wanted. So when it comes to my healing journey, that's what I mean when I say it was a bit meandering. Yes, I was invested in my health, but I was also very invested in going out and doing all the things. Not all of those things encouraged health and healing. But yeah, I basically had to figure out, okay, what's going on? What other types of practitioners are out there? Is there something I can be doing on my own? And so I went to acupuncturists. I did energy medicine, homeopathy, lots of different things, which sort of helped. And, but I didn't really have the whole picture view yet. And so I would sort of do things for a while, and it'd help a little bit, and then I'd meander off, and then I'd do some other things for a while, and that would help a little bit, and then I'd meander off. But eventually I got a little more serious, and I went to a local herb school. So I learned Western herbalism and got a certificate in that, applied as much of that as I possibly could, to where I was honestly it was like a challenge. How many herbs and supplements and vegetables and fruits and teas and tinctures could I ingest in any given day? And eventually I realized that's actually too much. I was overdoing that, and it wasn't helping the way it should have been. And so, I've had my hands on lots of different things. I've worked at integrative pharmacies, working with the vitamins and supplements, seeing things work for other people, but not for me the way they were for everybody else. So I eventually started learning about mindset and the power of neuroplasticity, the power of our mind. And when I started applying those principles, that actually made the biggest shift that I'd seen yet. Around that time, I got diagnosed with lupus. So chronic fatigue never fully went away, still had autoimmune type symptoms, couldn't figure it out. Finally found a really good integrative rheumatologist and a dermatologist. And between the two, I ended up getting diagnosed with lupus. And that was about, 8 years ago or so now. And so still did some of the Western medicine. I believe in a combination of the two, depending on what's going on. And in utilizing a little bit of Western medicine and keeping up on blood work and all that stuff, I started implementing, or really dialing in, I should say, on foundational health. So, what am I eating? Yes, just because the internet says I should be eating a plant-based diet, is that really what my body needs? Or, starting to really dial in, in question around what I've believed to be true about health. And is that actually true about my health? Mm-hmm. So starting to ask questions, but dialing in nutrition, dialing in hydration, learning about the importance of circadian rhythm. And all of those things started combining along with the neuroplasticity, and then with some somatic work and learning how important it is to maintain our nervous system and nourish and support that. All of those things combined sort of turned into my approach, and I am officially in remission at this point. Recently had my best blood work ever. So
yay, that's awesome.
There's still steps to be made, but I'm so much different than I was even just a couple of years ago.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. And you're right, the healing journey is it's like you say, it's a meandering road. And I love how you said that everything might have been working for other people, but it wasn't working for you. And I think that is so important in the sense of looking at your physical, mental, emotional health. I mean, if we have unique fingerprints and unique irises and unique everything, why wouldn't we have a unique protocol for our own health, which I think is absolutely brilliant, because it is so hard, I think, these days, because there's so much. We're in the world of information, but what information is accurate for us, right? And that, I think, is huge to look at that. So I love how you've put it in that way, because you're right. And Anna also believes, like you do, that Western medicine and Eastern medicine, natural medicines go hand in hand, really, which is beautiful. And then the power of the mind is absolutely incredible. But there is so much to unpack there. And the beautiful thing from an Akashic perspective, or looking at it from a spiritual perspective, is amazing how this all births purpose. Right? As we move through, our lives, and we start to look at, okay, how did one thing lead to another, and where am I, it absolutely birthed purpose. And I love hearing stories like that, because it's absolutely incredible, because there is that passion and behind there that is like, this is what I'm wanting to do, and I want to tell the world about this, and this is what I found. And I think that's so incredibly inspiring. So thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, it did birth purpose. I've always wanted to help people. And I think, just to go back to the beginning of my story also, which I said, started with mono. I had just gotten my life back after getting a divorce. Well, even back then, even though I didn't have any way of understanding this, I still knew that somehow getting sick then had to do with emotional stuff, and like a kind of an accumulation of everything I had just gone through leading up to the divorce. And, I think moving forward, part of my health journey was not just to help myself, but also like my ex had some health issues as well. And I think part of that was like, how could I help somebody like him that's going through that stuff, And so not just about me, but helping him, and then others that I've met along the way has been part of that. And then, for me, taking so long and never being taught, especially from a Western perspective, of like, how do I actually take care of myself
Mm-hmm.
on a foundational level that was never taught to me by anybody in Western medicine. And it shouldn't have taken me, 15 or so years to start to really, really piece that together and what that actually means. And so, there's so many women with autoimmune disease now, and I just want to shorten that learning gap, that learning curve for people. It shouldn't take 15 years for them to start feeling a difference.
Absolutely.
I love what you're sharing, and it's resonating a lot with what I also have shared in a program that I just recently launched for people here in Mexico, because I'm also a believer that educating people is stronger than just giving them the prescription. Let's say, in spite of not being medication, you can prescribe a diet, you can prescribe certain steps to do, but as you mentioned, everyone is different and everyone has to find their own truth, and the only way to find that is by listening to their bodies and how they speak to them. So my question goes into, what were probably the signals that happen to you when you when you were diagnosed that disease, and what was happening in those moments in your life? If you can take us back so that we can, let's say, put the pieces together of how these autoimmune conditions starts and what is the root cause mainly now.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big discussion, right?
Yeah.
The Western perspective on what's happening with autoimmune disease is that your body is attacking itself. Mm-hmm. They don't necessarily know why. Some autoimmune diseases are more easily understood than others, I think, but there's generally still not a super defined understanding of why somebody may or may not present with autoimmune conditions and symptoms. What they do know is that the body is essentially attacking itself. So it's recognizing itself as an enemy, and it's rallying the troops and attacking that thing that they think they're supposed to be attacking, when really it's just a part of your own self. This should, it's friendly fire basically within the body. And, for me, as far as how did my autoimmune symptoms start, looking back, knowing what I know now, I think I had early signs of autoimmune probably even back into high school. I didn't get diagnosed I didn't get mono until I was 24, I believe. But even back then I had Raynaud's syndrome, which is, your hands and your feet can lose blood circulation, so they can go completely white and numb. I was already having that. And then I was having a lot of gut issues throughout college and beyond. And I understand now that leaky gut is a huge, huge factor in virtually everybody with autoimmune, if not everybody. And many people beyond that don't have autoimmune, we're still seeing the prevalence of leaky gut in the majority of the population at this point. So I can look back now and see those were signals that my body was giving me that I need to pay attention. I just didn't know how to pay attention, or I thought going to the doctor and getting a checkup was enough of paying attention. What was going on again when I ended up with mono was serious emotional turmoil that ended up in divorce, and it had been a very stressful 2 years of my life. And again, knowing now, stress, and especially emotional stress, is a huge trigger for autoimmune conditions and for, low health in general. So like I said, I knew that there was some sort of tie-in with the emotional baggage from everything I'd just gone through to me getting sick. I just didn't understand how that worked yet at that point. But for sure, I was getting all kinds of signals if I would have only known how to read them, I could have perhaps addressed them in time and not had to go through this 20-year deal. My journey was so long, like I'd get kind of better for a while, I'd flare up for a while. My immune system was not great, so I'd get sick really easily. As I was leading up to the lupus diagnosis, I was going through kind of another depressive state where I just kind of like didn't know where my life was going. And I was just, I was sort of losing hope with like, I don't know, turning my life into something important, or I don't know, having some sort of clear direction. And my boyfriend and I had just gone on a trip to Kauai, which was fabulous. We had friends there. And we were coming back, and I had never felt so depressed to come back home to San Diego, because like San Diego is amazing. But I felt so depressed because I felt really physically good in Kauai for whatever reason. The weather was great. I just felt physically really good. I felt mentally really good. And coming back, I felt like, well, crap, now I'm coming back to my life, I guess. And it was right after that I started having some more symptoms, physical symptoms, which led to that lupus diagnosis. And so again, in hindsight, I can look back and see the tie-in between my emotional distress and then preceding presentation of symptoms. So I can't remember exactly where we were going with this question, but I think you were asking about like symptoms and signs that led up to all of this. So yeah, if we can start teaching our children earlier to learn how to tune into their bodies and tune into their minds, and I don't know, but we got to educate the adults first, because the adults don't know either. I mean, it took me a long time to learn how to do that.
No, and I think that what you are sharing is beautiful, because we all have experienced many moments of that. Despite not being diagnosed with autoimmune disease, we all have been very, let's say, unconscious, ungrateful of what our body is doing for us. And many times we just neglect the symptoms, or we receive a diagnosis, which is even worse in the Western model, because we receive medications, we are more, we attacked more of the body, we attacked more of the defense systems, and we certainly fall into this, let's say, dance of feeling completely disappointed and helpless. No? So that's what you are describing, that many times you felt this sort of depression of seeing your life not being able to, let's say, being in balance, feeling that you have some, let's say, agency to support your health, and agency to know what is happening inside of you, and it goes into that spiral of being desperate, and that leads into this mindset that we are tapping now with this conversation of feeling rejected of our own self. No, so that explains a lot what is the, let's say, internal model that we are developing with our body. No?
Right. And that diagnosis, especially for autoimmune or any other major health issues, is like it triggers helplessness, I think, and it triggers that thought process of, my body doesn't work. My body is attacking me. My body doesn't like me. What's wrong with me? And it triggers that whole mental spiral, which I was stuck in for a very, very long time. And even though I was looking for alternative ways to heal myself, I was still stuck in that mindset spiral without even realizing it. So we're kind of told that there's something innately wrong with us, and the only thing that we can do is to manage the symptoms. But what I've come to realize is that the body attacking itself is not actually that's actually the symptom of other root causes. That's not like the thing itself, right? Mm-hmm. So when you come from that Western mindset, they only look at it as like, well, you're stuck with this thing and it's a forever thing, and maybe it'll go into remission, but it's never gone, and all we can do is manage the symptoms with, the right cocktail of medications for you. And I'm not saying that never works, and that can work great for some people, and some people that alone can put them into remission. So I'm not saying Western is wrong. What I am saying is that the deeper root cause is that there is a miscommunication. There's a breakdown in communication within the body systems. And that is where we can really address healing on that root cause level. If we can start learning how to communicate again. It's like I always think of that game Telephone. Did you guys ever play telephone when you were kids?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, you've got all your body systems holding hands, right? And instead of having that original message starting at the one end and ending up with the same message at the end after it goes through each body system, instead there's that communication breakdown. So, you start with one message and it turns into something entirely different at the end point, and then the body's freaking out, doesn't know what to do. It's attacking the wrong people. The guy that's, the system that's trying to say, hey, stop, we're friendly, that communication's lost, right? Mm-hmm. So that's really now how I view autoimmune conditions and, cancer, anything like that, any major health issues, is we have to look at where is the communication breakdown happening and how can we support that on foundational levels.
And do you think that medicine is changing in the sense that it's not, I just think that Western medicine by itself is just not enough. Mm-hmm. It's like, and it's, and I think COVID started to show us this as well, because a lot of people, and that's one of the great things about COVID, is we started to see that it's a lot more than just Western medicine or a pill, or, and it's like you say, it might work for some people, but it didn't work for all. And I think it started to show that what was missing. And I agree with you in the sense of like, we don't take enough account into the mental, emotional aspects of what is going on, because it's like you say, the symptom is rarely connected to the cause, and we band-aid everything. It's quick fixes, and I think it goes back to where we've been so taught to ignore the body, especially when it comes to that corporate world where it's just like, oh, come on, just like stop, I'll sleep next week. It's like, come on, body, let's just push it a little bit further, like we're almost there. And it's like we're constantly lying to ourselves, and it's like you say, the body's going, oh, we need to stop, and we're just going just a little bit further, just a little bit harder, like you can do it on 2 hours of sleep, you'll be fine, kind of a thing, until the body decides, no, you're gonna have to deal with me and nothing else. And I think we're so used to ignoring that, or as like you say, we go straight into that space of judgment. My body's attacking me, I'm not good enough, instead of going, okay, why, like, what's going on with this? Like, where did it start? Like, what does it mean? What is in behind there? And I think that's what I love looking at all the other medicines, because it turns into this inquiry, this adventure of going, what's really happening? And then, and I think that's where we start to listen. And I think that's absolutely beautiful in that sense of going, how do we teach kids to listen to their bodies, right? I mean, I've got 2 teenagers at the moment, and I'm going, and we were actually applying for universities earlier, or confirming, we were going, and it was just like, and they're like, but there's such an amazing social life here. And I'm like, okay, like, how do we prioritize this in the sense of like, okay, what comes first, second, and third, and how do we balance that, and how do we listen to your body? And that's the thing. It's just like, can your body handle that stress, and how can you optimize your body, and we don't think about those things because we'll sleep when we're dead, right? The body is just amazing when we're that age, and it's just like, it doesn't matter. But then we start looking at how does stress affect the body. And I think it's many generations, because I believe in that intergenerational trauma that is carried on as well, which causes those stresses too. So it's a lot more, I think, than looking at just the physical. And I think that is the future of medicine and of people, is I think the more we move into an age of AI and technology, the more human we need to become. It's actually given us that opportunity to become more human, which is connecting into our bodies, which is connecting into our intuition. And I think that was a very good point that you made, because in the future, I think that's what they're going to teach in schools, teaching kids to connect to their intuition, because information is there, but how do you discern that information? How do you discern the signals that are coming from your body, your mind, and your emotions? And I think that was a very good point that you made there. How do we teach our kids, and how do we teach the adults who have been taught to ignore every single signal because perhaps maybe they didn't have the opportunity, they didn't have that opportunity to be vulnerable or to have a depression, because you still had to pay the bills and you had families to feed. But I think now we're at a luxury where we can listen a little bit more to our bodies. What techniques would you suggest, or what are some flags that I'd be like, hey, we need to go and check this out, or like, wait, hang on a minute, What would you say?
First off, I would say, I think if they're going to be teaching that to kids in school in the future, it isn't going to be through any public system. We're going to have to build that ourselves. Okay. So I'll put that out there. But I do hope I think there is a movement starting towards that, which is amazing. But as far as how do we start learning to slow down and listen, I think it is that slowing down. We need to intentionally take time to slow down. And that doesn't mean we can't still have busy lives, but like actually scheduling some downtime into your daily schedule. And that could just be 5 minutes to, get up from your desk, walk somewhere else. Like for me, if I'm working at home, I take fresh air breaks. So I'm just going to go outside, even if it's just for a few minutes. If I can, I'll take my shoes off and ground and just leave my phone inside and breathe. And what do I hear right now? Are there birds chirping? Am I hearing kids, playing in its yard a block away? What do I smell? What do I see? And just kind of tuning into the senses. I think that's a really great way to start. Intentionally stepping away from electronics. Like I used to, and I still do sometimes, but I used to take on all my walks, every time I'd walk my dog, I'm plugging in with a podcast. And while I love my podcasts, I have started actually leaving the phone at home or just not taking the earbuds and just having it in my pocket for emergencies or something. But letting my mind wander and again, indulging with my senses and just taking that mental downtime. Because when we get so caught up in the monkey mind, like I think we were talking about it earlier with, when we get that diagnosis, we sort of stop tuning in and we're just doing what we're told and we're going along with that fear mindset. Well, if we can stop for a minute and get out of our monkey mind, that's when we can actually feel our body and listen to those little, I call them intuitive taps on the shoulder, because that's what starts first. Those little whispers of like, hey, you should pay attention to me. Hey, that food's not digesting well. You should pay attention to that. Or, you kind of got this ache and pain going on. Like you should pay attention to that. Or even just about life things, about people or about situations. We tend to like get those little intuitive hits and then we mentally talk ourselves through why we shouldn't listen to that. Like, oh, no. It's going to be fine. I'll take this street instead of that street, even though my intuition told me to go that way. And then what happens? Like I've had several instances where I have ignored that intuitive hit, listened to myself talking myself out of it, and then ended up in some sort of precarious situations. And that's not even with my health. We do that with our health so much more often. So I think if we can start intentionally paying attention to those little hits, noticing when we're having them, and noticing when we're brushing them off. Like if we can just start tuning into that gives us that little bit of space to breathe and be like, maybe I should listen to that. Maybe I should go to the doctor now instead of waiting another year or two before the pain gets so bad or the symptom gets so bad that I can't take it anymore. Maybe I should find out what's going on early. Mm-hmm. I think that's where it starts. And then breathing, short breathing exercises throughout the day, just closing your eyes, maybe a hand on a heart, hand on your stomach, and just feeling the breath going all the way down to your stomach and coming back out. Honestly, just doing that is a luxury that people don't take. I still have to remind myself to do it. I'm still very human in this aspect. I know the stuff, and I still have to remind myself to implement these little tiny tools all the time to ground, get back into my body, get out of my head. And I love things like scheduling a nap into my day, taking a midday nap or taking a midday break or reading a book or just doing something to get me out of that go, go, go mindset, because my to-do list is always a mile long. And I know, most people are in that circumstance. So if we can just intentionally fit in some little 5 to 30-minute blocks of time where we are just sitting or just doing something we enjoy or eating a nourishing meal without hurrying through it, little things like that make such a difference.
I think you are speaking our language. That we really need to change this, let's say, program that we have received, that the more we do, the more we are valued, and the more we also have titles and things and shiny stuff. That's the more important that you can become, and that's not even true, because you are just chasing the next and the next and the next, and you are never done. And as you say, I know several people that have a lot of money, but they don't have time. So what is the money for if you don't have time to enjoy it? No? Or what does it serve, the full wall of titles, if you don't have time for yourself, if you don't know how to breathe, if you don't know how to take time for a walk, as you're mentioning, and enjoy it, and certain little things that we really are oblivious of them because we don't pay attention anymore, and we are trapped by this information age that is constant reminder of there is something to do. And if you can, as you mentioned, I also do that sometimes, that I also, every time I walk, I try to listen to something, but there is a time where I say, no, I don't want to listen to anything. Or while I'm swimming, for example, I try to just relax and let my mind wander into that stroke, into that lap that I'm giving, and just also find the rhythm of my breathing in water and relax, and take that time to relax. So all of those things, I guess, are communication also issues that we have developed and that we drag throughout our lives since we are children, because we are taught to do that. When we are children, we need to be in many activities. That's what our parents think. And they assign us to football or to, I don't know, a lot of things after the school, and then you don't even have time for you to be a child. No? So all of those things are really taking us back to the very, very simple things that probably that's why AI is so fast and it's growing, and it's going to take us a lot of load from us that we will need to find out what are we going to do. No.
I thought of an analogy when you were talking about communication. I'm sure we all have like a great friend or maybe a coworker at work that talks a lot, right? And we have a hard time getting a word in edgewise. And it's not even that it's not well-meaning. It's just like we can't communicate our part because that other person is just talk, and we can't get our thoughts out. Well, that's kind of what's going on in our body with our monkey mind. If we're always up here in our cognitive space and overthinking everything, and I only realized in the last year or two that I'm definitely on the ADHD side of things. I didn't know that everybody's brain doesn't necessarily work as fast as mine, but I have a hard time calming that down. But if I can't calm that down, then I can't listen to the communication that's coming from my friend, right? From my body, from the other body systems going on. So, maybe if we think about our own bodies and communication that way, that'll help us to realize the importance of like doing some of these subtle practices to just allow the flow of communication back and forth.
And Natasha, I was thinking that maybe you can help us in this area because you are the spiritual expert here.
Oh.
Can you tell us what is happening in this spiritual side when we disconnect from that self that is trying to speak, but we don't let it speak, and we have these also miscommunication issues, no?
Yeah, absolutely. But the thing is, the body keeps the score. So the body is always the last protocol. So whatever's happening in the body, it's already started in the mind. It's already started and then it's fueled by the emotion. So the emotion gives it fuel, and then we action towards it. So when Holly was talking about the mind constantly going, I was thinking, you know what, you're programming your cells. You're re-traumatizing your body constantly because the body doesn't know if it's here or there. From a spiritual perspective, it's a big part of it. We're getting to know who we are. A big part of it is we're starting to heal who we are. A big part of it is we choose our parents, we choose our bodies, we choose our circumstances because it provides the best environment for us to experience life. And that's why I was saying I was so excited that it's so beautiful to watch and I know the 20 years was not easy, but a birth purpose, and you're going to help so many people, and by helping so many people, you're stopping patterns, and those patterns are intergenerational. So you help one person, you help the collective, because it's changing that within yourself and educating, because as a species, we're all we're young, we're toddlers, we're needing to be educated as well. And all of this is coming at a time, especially now, where the planet is going through change at the moment. And it's not only our health systems, our educational systems, our financial systems, our government systems, they're all collapsing. And it's all going to get, because we're ending an era, and it's not to say that it didn't work. So funnily enough for me, I've been guided to go back into corporate to do conscious business. And I found myself going into corporate, falling into old patterns, and it got to a stage, it was actually last week, where I was like, this has to stop. Like I was like, and I got into my car and I drove 15 minutes. Luckily, I'm close enough to summer, and I actually took my shoes and my socks off and I walked, because I just wasn't absolutely ungrounded and disconnected from my body, because there was that, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to get this in. And I was like, whoa. I was like, because now it's so foreign to me, because I've been away for it for the last, maybe 10, 12 years, that frequency is not normal in my body. And I was like, you know what, had I taken my walk, when I came back within half an hour, that slowing down helped me to speed up because it helped me to get my thoughts together. It helped me to breathe a little bit and go, this is the direction I'm going in, instead of this is the direction I need to go in because I think that is what is expected. And I think that is starting to shift as well into that. And I was like, no, I'm going back in to teach new practices, and I need to embody those practices. So on a spiritual level, we've all been born at this time to make the changes. We're born at a time of transition on the planet because we need to make these changes. And I honestly believe that neurodivergence, ADHD, dyslexia, it's a different way of thinking, and it needs to, because it's come to break the educational system, because we cannot do life as we have been doing that. And I think it's absolutely gifted, and I think it's the children of the future. That's why we're seeing a lot more of it coming in to that, because our brain doesn't think. We're not all factory workers, and there's nothing wrong with factory workers, but we're not all, and that's where, we're becoming more human in that sense. And becoming more human is getting to know the human, the body, the discovering who are we, not only physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So I think that is what's happening on the spiritual side of things that is coming in, where one is not enough. And it's kind of like looking at that balance of even that chemical balance, because I did craniosacral therapy and I did a lot of somatic work. So it's looking at what is the trauma that's hidden in there? How can we change it? How can we change the patterns? Because that is probably why we've been born into this lineage, is to stop that intergenerational trauma. It's to heal that generational trauma, to make a different future for the humans that are coming in. So that is my take on future in medicine, and all of that is just, it's a beautiful time. It's not going to be easy. Well, it doesn't, I'm canceling that. It doesn't have to be difficult. It's difficult for us because we hold on to what we know.
That's how our nervous system works.
Yeah. That's how nervous, but it has been programmed, because if we know that we can adapt to anything that life throws at us, then it becomes a game. And when you're like, okay, I've got this. What are you going to throw at me next? And how can we consciously create our lives? Because right now we're unconsciously creating our lives. So life is happening to us. So our nervous system is always looking for what's going to happen to me. Whereas if we look at it, how's it happening for us? We actually kind of like shift that in a way, and we're like, okay, what is the next adventure that, that's coming in a different way? But there's deep healing that needs to be done. And I think when we heal for ourselves, we definitely heal as a collective, because it makes the future generations a lot easier to work through that.
You were talking about intergenerational trauma. And one interesting thing that I found out for me is that, and I know the intergenerational trauma, I think you can track it back like 7 generations is what I understand. But I have done, lupus tends to run in the female lines within families. And my mom also has lupus. And so it was not surprising to me when I got diagnosed with that. I don't know, maybe a year or two ago, I did some genetic testing just out of curiosity. I had somebody on my podcast who has a company that does that. So I did testing, and when he went over all of my tests with me, he said, I don't actually see anything in here that indicates predisposition for lupus or for autoimmune, which is really interesting because there's autoimmune all over my family. And what that tells me is that that was some intergenerational trauma that I had learned and brought in with me, because, for whatever reason, that's how emotional stress, emotional trauma, whatever it is being translated into the body. And I picked up on that, even though it wasn't like a major issue within the family, like my core family. It's not like my mom was never in the hospital. It wasn't anything like overly traumatic. It was just something that she sort of dealt with. And so without us even really spending that much time focused on her health, it still translated to me. And I still took that on, So I find that to be fascinating, and just to to show that we can learn these patterns of illness,
Absolutely.
even if we're not predisposed to it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, 100%.
And it sounds so true because we learn more by mirroring what we are being displayed, and we learn those behaviors, so we learn that it's okay to reject ourselves, to not be, let's say, that worthiness. Also, we start doubting our value. We also think that, as I mentioned before, we need to do a lot of things and earn a lot of things so that we can have this recognition from society. And that is not true. And now that we are talking also about these new generations and the spiritual side, and I was thinking about the dilemma that it's just for me, but for my daughter, because I really don't want her to continue in the traditional model of school, and I'm thinking that she will be much better in a tutor system where she has a tutor and she learns the things and she goes into those papers just to comply with the model, but she will learn also a lot of things, and she will have time to find what she wants, to also question her abilities in terms of practicing certain things, and just being attracted for what she wants, and not get into this box, as Natasha was mentioning, of the worker, the office worker, that they need to comply with this model of paying attention to things that are not even interesting, sometimes. And the way they teach now is so bad that they just make them memorize and don't question anything. So that's even worse, because now they learn that by memorizing they can have the grades that they need, but you ask them 2 days later about the things and they don't even know. So that's even worse for me, I think. So in terms of going back into the track of the immune system and how it learns also, what did you, let's say, your intuition started to notice when you were going into this journey of knowing yourself, learning more techniques, acquiring abilities to listen? What was this road of discovery for you? Because I guess that it was discovering a new self, let's say.
Definitely. Well, when I started learning about neuroplasticity through a spiritual mentor that I was following, one of those things that just magically popped up on Facebook, and I thought, oh, that seems interesting. Let me click on that. Oh, he's speaking nearby. Let me go see him. And then I, learned from him for quite a long time. Really what he was teaching was neuroplasticity and learning how to, and it's in the Bible too, captivate the thoughts of your mind. Our thought patterns, it's like they wear grooves into our brain, and it's easy, the deeper the groove, the easier it is to stay in that thought pattern. And when I learned that that I wasn't my thoughts, I was just the observer of them, that was like, wait, what? I don't have to believe everything I think. That was like a huge light bulb for me. And so from there, it was learning how to be that observer, how to recognize when I was in a thought loop that wasn't helping me, and then learning how to catch that thought and shift it as I was having it, so that it could start to create new grooves, like new patterns, right? That was like the first big thing. And so in doing that starts to kind of kick your intuition in, because learning to have awareness period of your thoughts, that starts to allow you to take a step back, breathe, and think about, like, observe and think about, like, well, is that helping me? Is that true? Just because I've been told that, just because I've always thought that, is it really true? And then you can start sort of getting into your intuition more and learning how to trust now what is coming up, you know? So that was honestly the biggest turning point for me. And then from there, other things started following. It's like, okay, changing my water. Well, that makes sense. Intuitively, you know, starting to learn, like, I get into the belief of somebody that seems authoritative telling me what, like, this is the thing. Like, I have a tendency to believe that. Now I can step back a little bit and observe and ask more questions and, like, okay, does this feel right to me? So I changed up my water after going through that process. That made a difference in my health. This was like during the thick of COVID, you know. All of a sudden my immune system wasn't being as overreactive as it was. It was like the healthiest year I had up until that point. I started rethinking nutrition, you know, just like foundational stuff. I went carnivore and animal-based for quite a long time. And with lupus, everybody tells you red meat is basically the devil. It's going to kill you. It's going to inflame you. Everything's going to flare up. You're going to die. Well, I went carnivore. That didn't happen. I healed a lot of my gut issues just doing that, you know, so, like, not intentionally going against the narrative, but just rethinking the narrative, and getting back to, like, well, what did humans literally grow on? Like they were hunters. Yes, they were gatherers, but they gathered when they couldn't find the hunt, you know? Yeah. So just starting to rethink these things, and implementing these foundational things, finding out about circadian rhythm, just learning even what that was, what that meant, and how important it is to the cellular communication, the hormonal communication within the body. You know, it is the sun that tells us when our cortisol should rise, when our melatonin should rise, and it triggers all the hormonal processes in the body. And yet we live these sedentary indoor lifestyles. And when we go outside, we're putting on our sunglasses, and then we're going, like, from inside our home to inside our car to inside whatever building we're going to. And we're not exposing ourselves to this foundational healing tool, which is the sun and the earth. And we're not connecting with these things, you know. So that was like the next big step. And then learning through those things how to do that, the somatic, you know, just small somatic practices here and there, and start tuning into, like, okay, what other root cause emotional baggage do I have that I need to sit with a little bit? And, you know, what can we start to take apart a little bit? And, you know, what's still running my thought patterns? You know, all of those things, I can't even remember what the question was, but all of those things together started accumulating, and my blood work started slowly getting better, and my, you know, energy started getting better and more sustainable. And, you know, like I said, now I'm in remission, and it's not one thing. It's like all of the things. But it doesn't have to be overwhelming. It can start just one little thing at a time, one little piece at a time. I'm all about simplicity. And like, we don't need a major life overhaul all at once. You know?
Be interesting. What are your thought processes on fasting?
That is something that I find fascinating, and I think it's incredibly healing. I am trying to implement that actually more for myself. I do some intermittent, but I struggle with doing the long term, like the 24 or the, you know, beyond 24 hours. So I'm currently sort of working on that, learning a lot from Mindy Peltz and how to do that specifically for women and their hormones, which I think is really important. But I think there's immense potential with fasting. I mean, you can regenerate your stem cells by fasting to a certain extent, you know, and that is incredible. Why aren't we talking about that? you know? That's a foundational thing. That when they couldn't find, you know, early humans, when they couldn't find the kill, they would fast. Not intentionally. It was just built into their system to be able to handle that because they didn't know when the next meal was going to be found. You know,
Yeah.
that is a basic healing tool that is free of all things. With everything, cost of everything is going up like crazy. And we have this literally free tool. Just like going outside, that is literally a free tool.
Yeah.
You walk outside and ground, you know, and let the sun tell your body what time of day it is and help it reset your hormones. And, you know, those are the things that we should be teaching and screaming from the rooftops. And yet we're still talking about finding the cure through a pill.
Yeah. Which the cure has probably been found 4 or 5 times over and then disappeared as well. But I think that's what's important in that sense of we're going back to nature. I mean, indigenous people work through this. Paganism, I mean, I've moved back to Scotland. Paganism, working with nature is coming back again. It's just that understanding of how life works is coming. I think we're starting to remember who we are at our base. And I think that is that aspect of connecting into nature, because we are nature. And I think we forget that.
And knowing that connects us to our own spirituality, right? That brings it full circle back to the spiritual side of things.
Yeah.
Whether you follow a Christian mindset or a pagan mindset, it doesn't matter, you know.
No.
But it connects you with that higher power, whatever it is that you believe in.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
It was good that you asked about the fasting part of the equation, because I have been practicing fasting for over 7 years now. And since I started going half an hour and increasing by week, just half an hour, I more or less I fast 18 hours, 5 or 6 days a week. And sometimes one day I go into 20 or 22 hours. I haven't done the whole day, but I'm about to do it. But I have felt a lot of energy and a lot of cognition and attention, and my sleep is really, really well. So you fix a lot of things that I didn't even had idea into tapping into that amount of energy that you save. The first time I used to run the half marathons before COVID, and I did one while fasting, and it was amazing how I felt after the half marathon. And I said, well, I haven't felt like this in a long, long time. And of course, I was older than the previous versions of that half marathon, no? So I think there's going to be a very big change into that also. And it's going to be a new tool. Well, new, let's say, because it's very ancient tool, but it's going to be this going back to the basics, no? So how can you wrap things up for people in 3 messages that you can give them so that they can start knowing their body better and fixing the communication issues?
Take time to breathe. You know, that's first and foremost. But also just know that if you have been diagnosed with something, that's not a closed book. And just because your Western doctor doesn't see it that way, just because your Western doctor has told you this is, you know, this is what it is, you know, you don't have to choose to agree with that. I'm not saying, again, don't follow your doctor's advice. Take your doctor's advice, but keep your mind open to other possibilities. Probably if you're listening to this podcast, you are already looking at other possibilities. So go to where you gravitate, like see where you gravitate and start there. But start. Don't just think about starting. I think that's the biggest part is take something small and just start, whether that's going the spiritual route, diving into your Akashic record, or whether it's, I don't know exactly what you do, David, but, going that biomedical route and getting another practitioner standpoint, or working with somebody like me, or just getting a book, like we're talking about fasting. Get one of Dr. Mindy Peltz's books and learn from her and start implementing her strategies. But at the end of the day, you have to start, because that's the only way things change. And taking that moment to breathe, tune into the body, and just using your gut, I think, to help guide you. That is, that's really important. And I think that's where everybody needs to start. We have to, that's about rebuilding trust with our bodies, right? And that's what we need to do to heal. So starting there.
Holly, how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at I am Holly Beck, BECK. And then I have the Health Bridge podcast, which is on YouTube and all of the different platforms. So I'm pretty sure in all those platforms, there's a way for you to find me there as well. But it's called the Health Bridge podcast. And I have amazing guests on there for all things holistic. So lots of inspiration there. I have a coaching program that I have a few different levels. I'm starting to implement a couple different levels there. So there's lots of different ways to work with me if that's something you're interested in. And just reach out on Instagram, send me a message, and we'll start the conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that was a very powerful message that people can listen and start doing these small steps into being more holistic in the health that they are practicing. And thank you everyone for listening into this episode. If you have questions, please reach out to Holly, in particular for this episode and any autoimmune conditions. And if you have suggestions for us, for the topics or guests that you want us to interview, let us know, and we will listen to each other in our next episode. Thank you, everyone, and we will see each other. Bye.
Thank you.